Welcome to Voice Notes Suck with Jay and Dave.
Series 1, Episode 2, The Mentality of the Digital Community. In this episode, we talk about the human need for community, different platforms having different mentalities, online bravery, how choice paralysis impacts decisions, cultural hotspots, larger digital footprints, how nothing is free on the internet, and much more.
Dave. How are you? I've been thinking about community mentality in the digital world, at least. And do you know, over time I've noticed something really distinctive, and I'm sure everyone else has seen this as well. Places like Facebook, LinkedIn, X, Instagram, all the social media platforms specifically have a very distinctive mentality. They seem to attract a very distinctive group of people. Why do you think that is?
Good morning, and I'm well. I hope you are too. And that's a big question to start this episode with. A really big question. Why do I think that is? I think a little bit of it has to do with the fact that you're protected a little bit on social media. I really have to cut out these ums and ahs. But yeah, back to the point, there's a curtain, isn't there, that you can hide behind. And that can give people a confidence to say things that maybe they wouldn't say in other areas of life. Maybe they're a little bit apprehensive of being so forward with some of their thoughts and matters when they're face to face with someone. Just some initial thoughts on a very, very big question that you just asked. Why do you think it is?
Why do I think it is? I mean, I understand that, and I think most people understand that you're hidden behind a screen, you're behind a keyboard warriors, the inner imp comes out. People feel braver, but my question is, why is it different on each platform? There's a distinctive thing about, let's say, Facebook, for example. The mentality on Facebook seems to be very, I don't want to use the word common, but I'm going to use the word common. It's like, I don't know, like a common language seems to be used. It's very playground mentality, school ground mentality.
I find that all social medias are cliquey in their own way, and then those cliqued communities are broken down, and each sub-community in the digital world has its own cliques as well. And as I said, I think it's people have a confidence to be a person that they might not be, or to express things that they might be more conservative about in real life. Like, I don't mean politically conservative, I mean aware of other people's responses. I think that's a big thing as well, is when you can't see someone else's direct response, when you can't react to their facial expression or their body language, it stops you having an awareness of the impact of the things that are being said.
Oh yeah, that's massive for me personally. Sometimes when I find myself getting into conversations or debates, even worse, on social media, I have to stop, because it's absolutely impossible to gauge how people are feeling. Like you said, even emojis don't cut it really. Unless you're having an in-person conversation about certain topics, they are best left off social media.
I'm not sure I fully agree with that. I think we need to moderate our responses and our expectations of what others may feel regarding our responses. I'm sharing something because I want to talk about it and because it's important to me, and I don't think I should be limited by the platform. I don't think the fact that it's on social media should stop me voicing something that's an issue. I think we're getting slightly away from the topic, which is going to happen in all of these voice notes, but we're getting away from the different types of digital or the different types of mentality in different types of digital communities. And I think it would be interesting to explore your thoughts on why you think different platforms have a different mentality, and I'm more than happy to share mine as well.
Well, touching on your first point about sharing things on social media that you feel are important and stuff, I genuinely feel that some topics are best resolved and discussed verbally, in person, not via text. Things like religion, politics, the standard things, I guess. They shouldn't be discussed in writing. It doesn't work. People get upset a lot more, frustrated, actually, is probably a better word. In regards to your second point of social media platforms and mentality, to be honest with you, it feels like algorithms play a massive part. And if anyone is listening to this who doesn't know what an algorithm is, it basically, the platform looks at what you're looking at, what you're typing, what you're searching, browsing, and then delivers this similar content. And then that obviously then you engage with people who like that content as well, or don't like that content. So I feel like social media platforms actually breed a certain kind of mentality. Like for me, Facebook, like I said, is like playground mentality. Instagram can be quite uplifting and positive, but also quite a lot of trolls on there. There's a bit of trolling. X creates this strange sort of toxicity.
So I think the problem with not being willing to communicate about these things in written form is we work in a global society, and I think it's really important to understand someone's values. And I think some of those topics, education, politics, religion, some of those really emotive subjects delve down into an individual's values. Me with the ums and ahs again. I think it's important that we do encourage and facilitate safe spaces to discuss these things. Moving back to my second point, I think different demographics use different social media platforms, and then that informs / creates that digital community. So for example, TikTok is mainly a younger crowd. Facebook tends to be a place where families connect and share information. Twitter tends to be, or X tends to be, a place for discourse and encouraging discussion. Not always, but tends to be. I don't know much about Reddit. I don't know much about Instagram, and I don't know much about other big platforms either.
Yeah, but don't you feel like because it's such an open public forum, the platforms actually provide the facility to create private groups and communities, so people just go into those anyway, and then that creates a mentality within that closed off community?
Yes, but I think that's human behaviour. I don't think that's the platforms as such. I think we're naturally herd animals / tribal creatures, and I think we will always cluster together in groups, and we will always look for like-minded people to build our groups for multiple reasons. I think there's safety, I think there's security in it. I think there's that feeling of being part of something bigger than yourself, and I think that's really, really important to humanity, not to individuals, but to humanity as a whole. To be part of something that's bigger than yourself is something that we've always done, always looked to do. And maybe now, instead of going to church or being a company man for 50 years to find that community, we're finding digital communities instead.
Don't you think that herd mentality in an open forum, though, can create problems like bullying and, you know, people start wielding pitchforks and stuff?
Yes, I do. But I don't think that's any different from any other form of society. And I think it takes good examples and people standing up to drive a different mentality, a different thought pattern. I think when you're in your own echo chamber, it's very, very easy to think that you're right and what is an opinion is a fact when it isn't. And that's always been the case, What we're trying to do is change habits potentially, or looking to change habits that have lasted millennia. And that's a big ask.
It's difficult, that, though, isn't it? Because the social media platforms drive the content that you interact with the most. So how are we ever going to get out of this small echo chamber unless we literally actively go and find it? It's just not going to happen, is it? How do we get out of that kind of mentality? Because it's forced upon us a little bit.
Yes, it is forced upon us a little bit, and it always has been, right? And I think not losing sight of that and understanding how we've moved forward is important. Like, a lot more of this is our choice now. Think back to the early 90s in the UK, and there's 4 TV channels, there's maybe 10 mainstream newspapers, there's your local community efforts, and you are forced into one of those. There's, like, if you want to be part of a community that's bigger than yourselves, you don't have any other options. And then if you don't play by the rules of that community, you're not allowed to play in that community. So what we're seeing is an expansion of the opportunities for different communities to move away from being penned into something by the algorithm. It's about awareness and discourse and discussion and sharing this information with people. That's my thought anyway.
Do you feel like that growth and change and evolution and expansion of all those channels has reduced the quality of the things that we're putting out, though?
Not quite sure what happened there. No, I don't think it has. I don't think that's the cause of the reduction in quality. I think the cause in reduction in quality is you're much more likely to find people that agree with you. And if you find people that agree with you, you've got no incentive to offer more of an opinion. That's the wrong way to say it. You've got no incentive to question yourselves or to have that quality conversation because everything's in agreement in your circle. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. That's highlighting my point, though, that really. Like, say, okay, right, so Channel 4 are struggling at the moment, it would seem. They're struggling. They're not getting independent production companies in. They're just really struggling in that regard, and it's because of streaming. And I found that very interesting because, again, that's like little communities all spreading out and sprawling out and creating these new little pockets of, these people watch this, these people watch that. And there's so much now that the same could be applied to the different clusters of mentalities. It's almost like breeding smaller cultures, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing or a good thing, it's just a thing, but it's an interesting thing to note when you're entering into certain areas on the internet.
So there's a couple of things there. Traditional TV is struggling because people don't watch it, so advertisers don't pay for the advertising space. If advertisers aren't paying for the space, then there's no incentive to pay people to make TV for that. That's the first thing that I want to say in regards to Channel 4, and it will be the same for ITV. It will be the same for multiple Sky channels. Streaming is the way forward for digital entertainment, whether that's a podcast like Voice Notes Suck, or whether that's a TV channel, potentially even indie productions or new productions. So that's an important thing to understand, is how our behaviors and habits are driving where people engage with their content. Yeah, and with more access, with more digital access for more people, it's easier to find like-minded people. Traditionally, you had to look in a very small area to find like-minded people. Now you've got a global audience to find like-minded people.
What this has caused, though, and from my perspective as a creative and observer of social trends, it's created apathy, unfortunately, because there's so much choice. Maybe it's not apathy, maybe it's just there's so much choice that whatever product you put out there is missed, and the person who shouts the loudest rises to the top all the time, which does seem to be the case. The person who shouts the loudest and the person who's got the biggest pockets rises to the surface and gets the forefront, and money does seem to be playing a massive role in visibility for people. It's almost like humanity incorporated.
I don't believe the mentality of the digital community has caused that. That's where I'm at. I'm not saying that's not the case. I agree. And I wonder if it's choice paralysis rather than apathy. Like, there's so much happening all of the time that you really do have to focus where you spend your attention. I also think that end users, content consumers, buyers, community members, purchasers, service users, whatever you want to call them, they believe that they're much more valuable than they ever realised. And that's added a new metric into this equation as well. It's fascinating, and we're exploring new territory. I mean, digital community as a thing is really only about 15 to 20 years old.
I suffer very, very quickly with choice paralysis, even in shops, supermarkets, anywhere where you can like get a load of stuff. My brain just melts, and I just do nothing. And I worry that happens on the internet, especially on all these social media channels.
I think that's a fact, and I know saying think and fact kind of suggests it's an opinion. But no, I agree with you. I think that is very, very much a thing, and I think a lot of people suffer from it. And what that pushes you to is the things that feel safe and the things that you're used to. That's, what you said in your previous message, essentially. So we're exploring new realms, and I think it's important to not expect immediate change and talk about these things as well. So kind of understand that it's not going to change with a click of your fingers. I'm not sure that can be heard or not. It was a really bad click of my fingers. But to understand that it's not an instant change, and the digital world gives us this perception of we can have anything we want right now, anything. And when it comes to things like this, I think we need to temper that and understand driving big change across society like this takes time.
Yeah, you're right. People forget too that there isn't really such a thing as anything free on the internet. It all comes at a cost.
I gave your last message a heart, Jay, because everything does cost. It either costs time, it costs energy or effort, or it costs money. And we need to work out how we're willing to spend those things. Time's our most precious commodity. Once it's spent, we can never get it back. Our effort and energy is limited at any given time. We've only got a certain capacity for effort and energy, and once it's spent, we need to go and recuperate it with rest and recovery. Money is the most tangible of all of these items. Money's the thing that's got the most flexibility and fluidity. So I think it should be ranked the least. I can't get my words out. My time is the most important thing to me. And where I spend my time is, how I dictate value is where I decide where I spend my time.
Well, I have to say, Dave, this has been a very fascinating discussion, and I hope that there are some takeaways for people out there. The takeaways for me are that the online world is a double-edged sword. Social platforms can dictate content, inspire mentalities. People will always be people, regardless where they are. People are more likely to be brave online. People always seek connection. We need more changemakers breaking out of the norms. Choice paralysis could be keeping people separate. We have cultural hotspots online. Digital footprints are becoming much bigger. Nothing is free on the internet. People gravitate to what they used to. You said big change takes time. And the biggest one is, are you spending your time well online? Dave's been Dave. I've been Jay. See you next time.
Jay, yes, and yes. I couldn't have summarised it any better. You have been Jay, and I appreciate you very, very much. And that's it, isn't it? Everything's been said that should be said. At least I think so.
Yes, Dave's been Dave, I've been Jay, bye. You've been listening to Voice Notes Suck with Jay and Dave.